Are you ready for September? Because I'm not. Today I will be going over many fantasy books that are coming out in September. There are so many fantasy books coming out in the last part of this year, and it kind of makes me wonder if people associate fall with fantasy, and that's why all these releases are happening in the last part of the year. But either way, it's exciting. Let me know as we go through these how many you added to your TBR or how many were already on your TBR. Even if it's 0, I will not be offended. I just kind of want to get a gauge on what types of books to include in these videos in the future. And with that, let's get into it. I will be going through these books in the order that they come out in September. So these first few books come out on September 5th. The first one I am looking at is called Into the Bright Open, which is a retelling of The Secret Garden, and I have a thing for retellings. With the help of a charming, intoxicatingly vivacious Matisse girl named Sophie, Mary begins digging further into her family's secrets, both wonderful and terrifying, to figure out how to free Olive. And some of the answers may lie within the walls of a hidden, overgrown, and long-forgotten garden the girls stumble upon while wandering the wilds. The next book, also releasing on September 5th, is a middle grade fantasy book in the Rick Riordan Presents series. This is a standalone within that series. Most of them are only either a standalone or a couple books, and they're based on mythologies. Corazon yearns to finally start training as a Baybalin, a mystical healer and spirit guide, under her powerful guardian Aunt Tia. As soon as her magic awakens, Corazon plans to bring her parents back from the dead and no longer have to rely on a soul key that allows visits with their ghosts for a few hours every Saturday night. The next set of books we're getting into are releasing on September 12th. The first one that I'm going to talk about, Godkiller, has already released in the UK, but it is now being released in the US on September 12th, and I am really excited for this one. Kissen's family were killed by zealots of the fire god. Now she makes a living killing gods and enjoys it. That is, until she finds a god that she cannot kill. Skedi, the god of white lies, has somehow bound himself to a young noble, and they are both on the run from unknown assassins. And speaking of books that are released in the UK first, the next book on this list is a book that currently is only being released in the UK, and I cannot find a US release date anywhere. This author's previous book, Ninth Reign, the entire trilogy was released in the UK for quite a while before it was released in the US. So hopefully this one doesn't take as long, but we'll see. Enos was raised by griffins and has never seen another human face. She lives wild, as they do, eating their raw meat and flying with her Talonsister, Taruk. The griffins fiercely protected their isolation. The piles of skulls that litter the mountains of Brittleton are testament to that. But the magic they guard will always make them a target for the greed of men. By choosing not to kill Enos when she was just a baby, the griffins may have doomed themselves because the girl's past is coming for her, and it carries a lethal blade. Our next September 12th release is an adult fantasy book. Honestly, this kind of just seems like a grown-up queer version of Harry Potter. Seriously, the cover looks like Harry Potter to me. Adrian, professor of magic, must survive his own failing mental health and tenuous partnership with a dangerous ally in order to save the city of Astrum from a spreading curse. The next two books say they are releasing on September 14th, which is a Thursday, which is a little unusual. Usually books release on Tuesdays, but you know, Thursdays are good too. He has precious little hope of escaping the wrath of Vixen, the most feared duelist in the entire city, until he stumbles through the stage door of the magnificent Operato Bellezza and tricks his way into the company of actors. An archaic law provides a temporary respite from his troubles, until one night a ghostly voice in his head causes him to fumble his lines and inadvertently blurt out a deadly truth. The city's most legendary hero may actually be a traitor and a murderer. Dun dun dun. Our next September 14th release is The Words of Kings and Prophets, which is the sequel to The Children of God and Fighting Men. This is a book I'm excited to read, but also it has some names that I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing correctly, so just bear with me, please. When a mysterious man comes to King Brian's court, his presence could spell disaster or deliverance for both Gorflaith and Fodla, and for Ireland itself. For he is Thomas, an ambitious immortal with few scruples, and he will do anything to see his plan become a reality. Soon, mortals and immortals alike are drawn towards a bitter conflict that could decide the future of Ireland and all her people. We are moving on to September 19th, but the fantasy names are just going to keep coming. A Champion of Flame looks like a really fun book, though. Though heroes might immortalize in stories, it's the artisans who guide them to victory. They are the hero makers. Ever since she was an orphan taken in by the Order, Reid has wanted to be an artistine. Now, as an initiate, she has one challenge that stands in her way. She must shepherd her first hero to glory on the battlefield. Succeed and Reid will take her place beside her sisters. Fail and she'll be cast out of the only home that she's ever known. The next book, The Princes of Thornwood Drive, looks like a fun parallel universes fantasy focusing on two sisters. Two sisters are trapped on opposite sides of reality in this enchanting and deeply moving debut that weaves together a contemporary narrative with a parallel fantasy world. There is a dark prince at Lake Forest, one who has taken a peculiar interest in not only Alyssa, but her sister as well. And while Lane struggles to make ends meet on an everyday basis, Alyssa finds herself leading a battle that threatens to destroy not only her, but her sister and their entire kingdom. Our next book, A Study in Drowning, looks like a fun, dark academia mystery book, and it just sounds really intriguing. As two rival students investigate the reclusive author's legacy, piecing together clues through his letters, books, and diaries, they discover that the house's foundation isn't the only thing that can't be trusted. There are dark forces, both mortal and magical, conspiring against them, and the truth may bring them both to ruin. I just realized I missed the September 5th one, but this one looks fun, so I definitely want to include it anyway. Kayla is an ordinary girl, or so she thinks. But when the day at a state fair is interrupted by the news that she is the daughter of a dark lord, and she and her family are quickly whisked away to another world, one that is chock full of magic but lacking in technology. As she ventures closer to her father, Kayla must decide whether to accept her birthright. Is she destined for darkness? Or can she become a new kind of dark lady? Now back to your regularly scheduled programming with your September 19th releases. This one is also a fun middle grade fantasy. It is Adia, Kelbara, and the Circle of Shamans. Life in the swamplands is tough for 12-year-old orphan Adia. Her aunt and uncle believe she is an Agbanji, a demon-possessed child thought to bring misfortune. And when Adia manifests mysterious powers, accidentally destroying her village, she starts to think that they might be right. I think September 19th is just the time for fun books because this one also looks like just a lot of fun. It is a mythology retelling called The Wildly Unknown Myths of Apple and Dorothy. A spellbinding tale following the modern-day descendants of ancient Greek gods and how two young girls struggle against the weight of family history, end up becoming their own epic myths with large consequences. If you could choose to be a god forever, would you do it? And moving on to September 21st is The Return to Edan. This is the final book in the Edan trilogy that has been all released this year. I've yet to read them, although I do have the first one on my Kindle, and I will read from the description of the first one just because I don't want any spoilers. A holy war looms over the kingdoms of Ormenland. A chance encounter bestows a terrible curse upon a young man. Dayraven's curse may decide Ormeland's fate. But first, with the help of unlikely friends, he must survive the shattering of his world. Moving on to September 26th, we get our first sci-fi release that I've had on this list. I'm not quite as in tune to sci-fi books, so definitely let me know if I missed any. Naira and Tarkeen have escaped vicious counter-revolutionaries, misprint monsters, and the pull of a dying planet. Now, bound together, they must find the truth behind the blight that has been killing habitable planets. Our next September 26th release is The Fragile Threads of Power. This is a new series in the Darker Shades of Magic universe, and I feel like is probably the most hyped book on this list. Amidst this tapestry of old friends and new enemies, a girl with unusual magic ability comes into the possession of a device that could change the fate of all four worlds. Her name is Tess, and she's the only one who can bring them together, or unravel it all. And our final book on this list is a book that had me at first sight of the cover. It is so gorgeous, and the story also sounds beautiful. The Pomegranate Gate is the lyrical first installment of the Mere Realm cycle, a vibrant and heartfelt Inquisition-era Jewish epic fantasy. Brimming with folkloric wonder, the Pomegranate Gate weaves history, myth, and magic into the exquisite tale of fate, legacy, and friendship that will leave readers spellbound. And that is my roundup of the books releasing in September. Definitely let me know if you added any of these to your TBR or what types of books you would like to see featured on these lists, and if I missed any books releasing in September. I hope to see you in another video, and happy reading.